systems.
So I have 48 minutes to talk to you about this subject. I am going to talk to you about the subject. As you'll see, there's a lot of personal views in it. I'm going to take you through what a 10x might do, and then I'm going to do it again. And I'm going to show you a few of the tools the tools concepts rather than specific tools that you might be interested in looking at. This subject is quite fluffy because it's all about how we behave and what we think. And of course, as developers, we're all used to be saying, I am an edge case. Nobody else does what I do. I am the only one who does it. Right? So actually, that's not true. We all have commonalities. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what they are from a 10x point of view. So let's start. What is a 10x developer? Well, you've all read the press. Do you know you can hire 10x developers? You can go to Google and type in 10x developer, and you'll get adverts saying you can hire them. Ready immediately. Not sure what they are. So do we imagine this, that a 10x developer is a super person who can just do things better? Superpowers. That's what it sounds like. Can write 10 times more line of code than you. Can fix 10 times more bugs than you. Right? Has a secret identity. You know those guys who say, I only work alone, don't hold me back, I need more coffee. Those people. Is it them? And do they have special powers, real special powers? I rewrote the back end overnight. Yeah. How well did that go? But we know these people, right? You've met them, you've worked with them. There's always somebody who's very visible. In reality, what you'll find is that 10x developers, as we start to describe that's not really true. They're much more humble and they're much more invisible. They definitely don't spend their time, they don't spend 8 hours a week, 800 hours a week. Not even sure that's possible, but you get the idea. Do they just work 10 times harder than you? No, right? But we can describe them this way, right? They're the people who just seem to get stuff done. High quality deliveries on time, just better, right? But actually, the last line there is the key, is actually they aren't just doing themselves and making their life better and earning more money that way. They're helping you as the team get better. And a lot of the people that you work with don't do that because they go, hey, I am the best person. So a 10x developer is more like the guy, the Duke on the jet set, more thinking about the future, less adversarial, more Iron Man than Superman. Right? Superman is not the greatest model, is it? Secret identity, you don't want people with secret identities. Iron Man is a much better model for us to think about because apart from the fact that in the Iron Man that we know, there was a lot of brains involved, a lot of smarts, it's still tech. It's still application of tech. And if you squint at it, you can say that Iron Man is a 10x developer because they get things done and it all works together. Much better than a Superman model. But actually, as I said, it's even more than that. It isn't about somebody who gets stuff done. It's about how well they help others achieve success, how well they help the team. Yes, they're good and they're really fantastic, but the best ones are the ones that bring the whole team up, right? And we'll talk about that in a minute. So I'm going to claim 10x developer is someone like this. He's efficient. They just do the right thing. They're effective. They just do the right thing. They enable others to do the right thing, right? They communicate. They communicate very well, whether it's up, down, across, because they understand that it's everybody else together that makes us successful. And of course, it's productive because you can do just the right thing, but it still has to be connected with everything else. And a master craftsman, be careful when you say craftsman when we talk about developers, but I'm talking about people who understand the tools that they use. Whatever it is that they want to use, whatever process, they understand it. A 10x developer is somebody who very often would have what you might call second thoughts. Somebody who looks at something, gets the obvious feedback and reaction that maybe you do, but a second thoughts are going, hang on a minute, let's just step back. Let's think about that again. Let's think about it differently. And some of the stuff I'm going to show you are just how those sort of things sometimes pan out, right? So it sounds like this person is fantastic, right? But of course, we're talking about it as if they don't really exist. And to a degree, I suspect they don't really exist. They're just a role model that we like because we're all under pressure to deliver. And so anything we can do to be more productive is attractive, right? So go search for 10x developer. And apart from the fact that you'll find people who say you can hire them from them, mostly it's like, what is a 10x developer, right? So, okay, so who am I? What am I? So my name is Steve Poole. I used to work for IBM, work for Red Hat. I now work for Sonatype. I do security stuff, supply chain stuff, but I care about developers. I care about developer productivity. I've done a lot of stuff, right? I've been doing it for a long time. Look, I started out when Java was tiny, right? That's when I got into the business, and it's all been Java space. I've worked with some really amazing people. I've worked with lots of guys at Sun, the VM team, did talks with Stuart Marks, fabulous people. I've done amazing things with other people. OpenJDK work, Java work, you name it. Like everybody else, I've done my own stuff. I had the honor of doing the first 128-bit Java. Yeah, 128-bit. Because AS400s are 128-bit. Right? That was what I was asked to do, and so that was my job, and I did that. That was cool, learned stuff. And then go on to run bigger things, to be team leaders. And then I end up doing really big, serious work, leading big teams, lots of money, enormous scale, okay? And a bunch of stuff on the side. So yeah, that's fun. I've had a great career. I've done an amazing amount of stuff, and I've worked with some amazing people. But I'll tell you what, the number of people I've met who I would say are 10x developers, minute number. One a year maybe, if you're lucky. And that's working on some really serious projects with lots of people, right? Not all of them were developers. Some of the best 10x developers that I've worked with have been testers because they helped make the change. They helped make things happen. It isn't just about developers. And of course, none of them were superheroes. They were just very well-focused human beings. They had a job to do, and they knew how to do it, and they knew how to enable everybody else. Right? So how do you think like a 10x developer? Well, we don't talk about tech. I'm going to give you two role models. It's just a little tiny thing. One side, Jeremy Wade, a most amazing fisherman. You may have seen him on TV. And this lady whose name I won't mangle. Okay. So Jeremy is a great fisherman. But if you've ever watched how he fishes, because he's on TV and you can watch these things, he has a particular style of doing it. And it's entertaining, but he does the right thing first. He's out trying to catch fish all around the world, unusual fish, dangerous fish, you name it. And the first thing he does is he understands the environment. He puts time and effort into thinking about what he's trying to achieve. And he talks to the locals. He talks to his teammates, gets experience from them, understands what it is that they're trying to do. Okay, so I know how to catch this fish, and it does like this, and it lives here, and it eats this. That's the very first thing that they do. They don't touch tech. They think about the problem. They understand, they explore, they learn. That's the very first thing. And that's what 10x developers do. If you look at the people who are productive, they're all about removing uncertainty. So they'll go learn about the environment. They'll go kick the APIs. They'll look at the tools that are being provided. They won't touch anything about what you're trying to do. What's my problem? Well, before I get to my problem, I want to look at the environment and understand it. Because with understanding comes certainty, because with uncertainty, everything starts to go wrong. Now, our other role model is Olympic, world, and European champion in long jump. But you know about athletes, if you watch them, there is this moment in all athletes like that where they're getting ready to go, and then they focus. And they all have different tricks, but they focus. And they're not distracted, and they're going, that's just the one thing I'm going to do. And that's what 10x developers are like. If you talk to them, they're not doing 20 things, they're not doing 50 things, they're doing one thing. And they're very clear about why that next thing is the next thing to do. They have that clarity of thought because they understand what they're trying to achieve, and they understand why this thing is the next thing to do and not this thing. Right? The things that we're talking about, to a degree, are what we normally talk about, but they have much better understanding of how to prioritize because they spend time gathering facts and data and exploring things to be certain that this is a useful type effort to spend. Right? So it's good to have these role models, and it's good for these role models not to be in the tech space, because as I said, we tend to claim that we're all unique. So it's good to look for those. And I have my role models that I can point to over the years, but that doesn't really help you. You need to find your own models. You have to find the people within your organization that just are exhibiting the skills that you like and the behavior, and you just go talk to them, because almost always they're there and they'll go, yeah, I'll talk to you, I'll help you, I'll tell you how it works for me, right? Because it is all about the team. You can be a better developer for sure, but at the end of the day, if you're part of a better team, then everybody benefits. Okay, so what do they do? Productivity, how to behave like a 10x developer. Well, there are some truisms, pithy statements. So it's not how you write code. It doesn't matter where the brackets are, what the names of functions are, methods, that doesn't matter. But it is really important about the code that you write, that it's just the code you need to do the job. You don't think about the future, you think about just the job, the code you have to do now. Just whatever it is that you're being asked to do, the minimum, right? Because we'll come on to why that is in a minute, okay? And it's not about any individual tool that you use, but it is about that you use the tools that you've got and you use them wisely and knowledgeably. Again, I'll talk a bit later on about why this can go seriously wrong if you don't pay attention to your tools, right? And as I claim, it's about the team and not about the individual. Because you don't get to the top of Everest on your own, you have people to help you get there. And if they don't know what you're trying to do and can't fit in with what you're trying to achieve, it's not going to work, right? And it's not about guesswork. It is amazing how often we start projects not understanding what we're trying to achieve and how it's going to bite us. It could be performance profiles, it could be cost, you name it. We've all gone there and gone, oh, that didn't work. I wish I'd known that earlier. So productivity from a 10x developer's point of view is certainty. How do I make sure now that I have the facts I need to do that job? It is much better to take time out to do that than it is to go, oh, we'll fix it when we get there. It'll be fine. Yeah. So it's about that. It's about getting information to the developer. Feedback. We're going to talk about feedback, about educating the developer with the necessary information to do their job, and getting it as early as possible, because you know how it works. If you've written a whole bunch of stuff and you're 6 months into development and then something horrible surfaces that you could have fixed easily if you'd known, you kick yourself. So 10x developers try to predict what that's going to be, and of course it's different in every situation, and bring it back to the beginning. How can I prove to myself that I understand what I'm going to be doing? Right? Go away. So you can see the others. Ensuring developers spend their time on creating value. Yes, we're all really busy. We don't want to do stuff that's wasted. And whatever that is, whether that's communicating with people, whether that's writing code or tests or whatever, anything that gets in the way of delivering value needs to be examined, reduced, removed. Right? Everything that gets in the way between you writing code and it becoming value reduces your productivity. And 10x developers look at that in all manners to try and figure out how to make you productive. Right? So they might work like this. Right? This is just made up example because it's silly, but I want you to get the sort of the sense of this stuff. Right. So the first thing you'll notice is 10x developers are really like this tool. And what they really like doing is putting everything in Git. I know 10x developers who basically their whole life, all their notes and things, not even code, everything they're doing goes into Git. And if they commit it, because they make a mistake, they can roll it back. And they get into that habit. Everything I do goes in here. Why did I make that change? I've done that. I've changed the config, that goes in there. I've written some code, that goes in there. I've made a note to buy some milk, that goes in there, because it's a habit. It's a safety valve. I can go back and find things. They do that a lot, right? And then the second thing that you see them do is sort of go to the other end and go, okay, what am I going to deliver? How am I going to deliver? So quite often I've seen these guys build small CI/CD systems for their own purposes. They're not ready to, it's not one they're going to share, but they want to be able to get that regular process going, because you don't want unpleasant surprises when you try to go to production. So anything you can do to help you, and of course, it's a lot easier if you go, you commit stuff and then kick a Jenkins build job off to do all the stuff that you were going to do. You're going to do it anyway, so put it into Jenkins, right? But just enough. Then if you challenge them with something new, they tend to wander around. It's like they learn things. So things you might learn. So somebody gives you a new platform to go do something with. What might they learn first? Well, they'll probably learn what's the editor, because that's the first thing to do, is learn the editor, because you don't know how, you've got no ability to install stuff. Oh, so maybe you learn how to install stuff, right? And the objective here is to learn just enough to be able to do the next step. And so it's, how does delivery work? Okay, I've got a new platform, whether it's serverless or a VM or something brand new. I have some code, I need to get it in this place. Let's prove I know how that works, because that's going to pay dividends, because that's going to educate me on some of the peculiarities. And I need to know things like editors and things, because when things go wrong on my machine, on my serverless stuff, wherever it is, I may not have IntelliJ available to me. So I need to use the simplest basic tools that are available. That's how they think. Simplest things to get the job done. Right? And then once they've proven that the thing works and they've got Hello World or whatever the stuff is, they break it. Because the next thing you need to know is how to find out that things have gone wrong, and where the debug is, and where the logs are, and where the journals are, and what it looks like when it goes wrong. Right? Do I have to write special code to get some diagnostic information out? Oh, I didn't realize that. That happens at this beginning stage. And then, if it's an API, for instance, they start taking it apart. We're talking about people who, as I said, are craftsmen. And I said, you have to be careful with the term craftsman, but you get the idea. It's somebody who knows the tools well. It becomes a habit. So if you have an API, what are they going to do? They're going to go read about it. They're going to learn what the limitations are. They're going to look for the places in the documentation that says, this might bite you, or it might not be that explicit. They read the fine print. Do you know that you get rate limited after this? Those sort of information is what they're going to pull out, and then they're going to try them. They're going to kick the tires. They're going to write code. They're going to write code to test the API does what it says it does. And you'll see that across the board, not just in remote APIs on other services, but also on functions. If I take in a new component and it's got 5 things it does, I'm going to write 5 test cases to prove it actually does what it does. Because one day it's going to stop doing that, and I'll have a test case to catch it. And if catching that will make me super productive, rather than spending hours and hours trying to debug something, which is because something that I use changed behavior. Right? And document everything is make sure that you've got a record so that when you come back, you can read your notes, and you put your notes in GitHub. Okay? More. Then you start building something. Whatever it is that's important, you're going to prototype it. Now, this doesn't have to be right at the beginning. This is all the way through. You're going to write codes and tests. But right now, is the thing to say is the code's not important. Right? Code is not important in this. It is sort of important, but it's not really important. The tests are the most important. Because the tests, so the jelly mold model is, imagine the jelly is the code. The mold are your tests. Because that gives you a mapping of your code, the behavior. You're going to change your code because you're going to learn things about the product, and about what you're doing, and it's going to evolve. The test cases, that mold, will give you confidence later on to do some serious refactoring because you have this enormous safety net. Right? And if there's any superpower that I've seen come out of these guys, it is that. They write test cases to test the functionality of what they're trying to do. They're happy to rewrite the code. They're happy to refactor it. That's not important. The test cases, the things that test the behavior, are much more valuable. Okay. Oh, I think I've said that. The jelly molds, yeah. And then there are other things, more subtle, about how you test things in general. And I'm going to go around this again in a minute, but I just want to put it here because it's part of the story. I said about second thoughts. We are so used to having situations where we have unit tests, integration tests, and quality tests, and whatever. And there is a person to run the unit tests, that's the developer. There's a person to run the integration test, that's an integrator. There's a person to run the QA test, that's a QA person. But second thoughts tells you that's just bogus. Why would you give this test to this person or this test to this person? Because it's got a name. It's a behavior thing of the test, right? So that's not how it's the best way to divide it. The best way is to think more about the test itself. How long does the test take to run? Is it really quick? Very long. How much domain knowledge do you need to run it? Right? Okay. Do you have to go and install WebSphere and DB2 and whatever, and take a long time to run the test? Well, that's not a test you want to give to a developer because that takes too long. But if you have a tiny test that has no domain knowledge really and can run really quickly, give that to the developer. And so good 10x developers are involved in these conversations about what tests should be run when. Because the more that the developer can run, the more productive you can be. But you don't want to run everything because that makes it silly too. So they're always looking at trying to refactor. What you'll see is 10x developers going, there's a bug, I keep getting a bug, it's in this test suite, give me that test suite. I'm going to pull out the tests that make a difference to me and I will put them here. Right? And the tests themselves, again, evaluate the tests. Have systems that tell you that, hey, this test has never ever found a bug. Put it in a bucket and one day have a look at it, maybe stop running it for a bit, or maybe have a look at it one day and go, oh, it doesn't actually test anything. Right? But we run them because the QA guys are going, I have a list of 50,000 tests to run. I will run 50,000 tests. The fact that 49,000 of them are pointless, have never found a bug, sometimes escapes people. But a 10x developer tester will take that view and go, am I getting value out of the time we're spending? Right? And then how you deal with issues. Technical debt, that sort of stuff. Well, issues can be divisive because lots of people like to have issues and keep them around forever. One day we'll get around to fix it. A 10x developer is going to tell you, don't do that. If you have things that you maybe want to do one day, take it off the issue system, hide it, put it on your wish list, because every single one of those is something that you have to spend cognitive time looking at. Right? So the idea is take out the things that you're never going to use, the nice-to-haves, the things you agree, we're never going to fix this. It's a nice problem, but not fixing it this sprint or this year. Right? And in fact, if people raise bugs and you go, yeah, it's a reasonable bug, but I'm never going to get around to fixing it, close it. See if it reopens. Because you'd be surprised how often people raise bugs and then move on. And then you fix it and they go, oh, yeah, okay, thanks. Right? You need commitment from your customers that that effort is worthwhile. Right? And start to communicate with the other people who are raising issues and get them to raise bugs with all the right information, not the, hey, the thing in the box. A 10x developer will do that in a creative style. It's not a big stick for sure, but it is, can you give me information? Can you give me this information? Can you give me like this? Educate people and then start pushing them back and going, you don't give me real data, I can't fix it. Right? And unfortunately, if there's any sharp edges, it's in this conversation because it's hard to have that conversation. Hey, I found a bug. Great, give me some data. And of course, sometimes the 10x developer will realize that they're not getting data because they haven't programmed it in, and he'll go fix it. And then managing your manager. Okay, 10x developers are really good at this because they have built trust, and because they can predict what they're going to do and mostly how long it's going to take. They can say, whatever you ask me, I can give you a real answer. And people go, thank you very much, I trust you. Right? And that's a key skill as well, because that helps you remove the pressure back from management, because you can give them real data, something they really appreciate, rather than, I don't know. Last week we did this, it took 6 months. Now you're going to say, hey, I can't do all that. We can't do that with issues. I can't get my test team to change things, right? So how do you start thinking like this? Yeah. Well, I'm sort of going to go around this all again. Right? So the first thing, of course, is let's be clear that a 10x developer thinks differently about the problems than you do. Right? Right? They're not these guys. They're not that I'm up all night. That's not them, so you don't listen to them. Right? You look for the people who think like this. So you have, hey, I'm so clever. I wrote complicated code. A 10x developer has a slightly different view of life. Right? And in fact, if you look at the code these guys write, they don't write lots of code with lots of comments. They write code, and generally you'll get blocks of comments that are going, this is what this is doing, this is what you should be careful of, don't change this, these sorts of things. Advice to themselves, right? Because the code is as simple as they can make it, and bear in mind, they're going to chuck it away if they can, because refactoring is possible. Right? So they're an engineer, but they're also a craftsman. So they have a view of how to do software engineering, but they also have a view of how to think about the tools. Right? So as an engineer, We're here to create value, right? And it's about software delivered on time, right? However you look at this, value ends up with, we wrote some code to make something happen to give somebody else some value. And we all know, and they know, that every time that you're late, whether it's time-wise or functionality-wise, that you're not delivering value. And if you just ship buggy code, you know that you're not getting value. And in fact, you're causing yourself some problems later on. Right? They also recognize that that value you've delivered only lasts a certain period of time. You've got to get in your head that it evaporates. We talk about software ages like milk, not like wine. It doesn't get better. Very rarely does software get better. Right? It just ages. Things change. Right? And that value that you're using, the value that you've given, if you do nothing, it will evaporate because things change underneath them, the requirements change. But you know what happens? It was really useful. And we all moan about the legacy systems that we've got. And at some point, that was the high value. Somebody else spent a lot of time making that happen. But it evaporates until it becomes the thing that you have to maintain and you don't really want to, right? And anything that you've added that was just in case just makes that worse. So again, 10x developers, just what you need to have, nothing more, because it's pointless if you do and it doesn't get used, right? It's just a complete waste of time, and it makes the maintenance of that just horrible, right? And if you do nothing, if you don't add value, if you don't improve things, then because software ages like milk, things just get bad. So you can't leave things alone. You have to do something. So 10x developers, somebody who understands this, deliver high quality value on time, that just what is needed, nothing else. Right? They take the ego out of this. My ego tells me that I get the success comes from the value that I provide, not the code that I write. Right? And it's the success other people achieve that's important. The code is just a means to an end. Right? The code you write is ephemeral. It will just evaporate. It will become less valuable, and at some point, it will become legacy and obsolete. Right? But the solutions that you're building, the bigger things, they are going to live for as long as you want them to live. And that's a mindset that you have to switch. Get away from the code that you're writing to this bigger picture. Right? And finally, this team thing. Right? It's you as a developer, yes, you can be a super developer, but you're still one part of a bigger process. And if those people aren't empowered as well, it takes you a lot longer to deliver. Right? I think I've said all this. Right. So look, this is hard. None of this is easy because it's changing the way you think. Right? There are some pithy guidelines I can give you. Right? Like skills are more valuable than using Stack Overflow. That's a good one. Right? Evidence over emotion. Yes. Prove to me that this bug is a real bug. Not you screaming at me because it's affecting something else. Teamwork over tantrums, like that one. We work together. We're a team. Don't shout at me just because you can't make your numbers. Let's have a conversation about what it is that's going wrong. Right? It is hard, isn't it? I mean, you can't do this. The balance is really complicated. You've got to balance delivering the code that you're being asked to do and all these other things. Right? But you can get there. So you do it incrementally. You get into the mindset of nothing big, small changes, right? Clarity of purpose. I just need to do this one thing. What facts do I need to have in my hand before I can do that? Okay, I need to go do that next. I can build up that story, right? And whatever the next step is, It's, okay, I understand now because I have clarity of purpose and I understand each of these steps, each of the things I could do, which of these is going to give me more knowledge, which is going to remove uncertainty, because uncertainty gets in the way of productivity. So what would our new, Claire, if I took a 10x developer and I said, hey, I give you a new cloud service, what's the first thing a 10x developer is going to do? Right? Well, as I may have said before, they're going to sit down here and think about how they test it, how they get evidence of how it works. They're going to build up CI/CD systems because they want to prove the delivery process, because that's solid and important, right? The testing, the automation gives them a solid base. I'm comfortable that I have tests that prove this API does what it's supposed to do, and I can automate it, and now I can build on top of that. And if my assumptions change, I've got a solid base, right? And that lets them do something else. It lets them take risks, because you've got to take risks. And so 10x developers prepare to take risks. And so that means thinking ahead. Well, you can read the words. But again, it's understanding that code is a means to an end. Right? Yes, you are developers, you write code. That's fantastic. You can write the best code, but understand it isn't about the code that you've written. It's about the value you've created. And that tomorrow you may need to refactor that code. And if you have built the right systems, you can do that knowledgeably, because you've got these sorts of things. You know, 10x developers write loads of tests. I think they write more tests than most developers 10 times. But they don't care about code coverage. That's not what's important. It's creating that shell of proof that my code does what I said it would do. Right? So they can refactor mercilessly. Right? So you can Google for this, but you get the idea. It's the code is not the thing. Right? The test suite is the long-term investment. Right. So, we'll go around the testing again, because I think it's important to understand this, how they think. So, this is a statement from, I'd say a 10x developer, but just a developer. I do Control S on my IDE. Ideally, code compiles, all my tests run. That would be fun, but that's not possible. So in fact, every time that we don't do that, we're taking some risk. Right? So that's why the traditional view of running tests, and about the value and the cost, because obviously the further down the line that you find the bug, the more expensive it is, disappears, because you think of it like this. You think about, how do I give the developers the tests they need to run without overwhelming them with unexpected extra domain knowledge, right? How much can I do that? That's my thinking. I want the people who know how to run WebSphere to run WebSphere. What I want to give the developer is as much as possible, but no more. Right? And I'm going to spend my time having those conversations about where's the best place to run this. Can I break that test into smaller pieces? Because I got this bug and I ran all this stuff, and actually it's a 2-line failure, which if I pulled out in a unit test, right, that sort of thinking is what it's about. Right? And that leads you to things like Quarkus. Quarkus has got this continuous testing mode, which you can talk to the Quarkus team, who may or may not be here. I see they've got a stand. But this is Control S, code compiles. Quarkus says, because you've changed this code, you only have to run these tests. That's 10x thinking. Right? It's all about this. However you look at it, it's all about feedback. It's about getting feedback from systems. Right? It's actionable intelligence. It's not just any old data. It's data I can make use of. And 10x developers spend their time across the board trying to figure out how to make things more precise and more certain and give them the data that they want. Right? Feedback works if everybody participates. And yet what we've seen is it's really hard to get people to participate in the broader picture. Okay? So you need a contract. Hey, Mr. Tester, let's talk about how we're going to work together. And often, that doesn't work because we don't like contracts. But to give you an example of how you could do it, and this is proven to work, I've done this a few times at places, is we build dashboards, right? Not a nuclear power dashboard or a code breaking dashboard, but something more like this. More like a car dashboard. A dashboard that gives you just enough information. You think about a car dashboard, what does it give you? It tells you how fast you're going, how much fuel you've got, tells you should put your seatbelts on, and that if things go wrong, it tells you. That's what a dashboard is. Just enough information for me to do my job. And so you can build these with all sorts of tools. You can build complicated ones, right? But they're expensive. You have to learn those. It's not what a 10x developer does. 10x developer starts with something like this. So dashing is a bit obsolete now. Smashing is its replacement. But it gives you dashboards that start off looking like that. So I've got a dashboard going, and then I have a conversation with the tester about what should the number be on there? How should I project it? And that conversation with another human being who's doing a job that's part of my process allows us to communicate more effectively and learn what each other is trying to do. And that's a great thing because it enables you to do more of the right thing. So, I've had these run all over the place, and, you end up with developer dashboards, like how many bugs we've got. So this one says OpenSev1 bugs. So the dashboard says, I said about a 10x developer goes, I know what's the right thing to do because information comes in that says, you've got a problem to deal with, I'll go do it. Not scroll through lists, tells me, right? And whatever that goes on the dashboard, there are two eyes on it. There's the person consuming it, and there's the person who's producing it. And they both now agree that if that goes red and it's got a number on, you're going to do something. Communication, right? And we've used these dashboards to look at how developers work. So this one says what it says is basically every commit, there was some analysis of complexity, right? So radius is the number of lines of code, and the color is complexity. We started plotting that. Then we started looking at, actually, on these days, if we do that, it breaks. All right? And we started to get feedback about developer behavior, all from dashboards. Right. So, the dashboard is just one way of doing it. The point is it's a team exercise to build feedback. And everywhere you look in the loops, right, there's all sorts of things that you can do. Improving feedback means you get better information, you can do a better job. And the team can do a better job. Right? Running out of time, yeah. So whatever feedback process you use, this incremental small units of feedback, just enough data to tell the developer, I've got a thing to fix. Just enough data for him to say, compared to this other thing, I now understand why that's important. I'll go and do that. It makes you highly productive if you're not having to figure out what's the next most important thing to do and read defects and issues and go, I really don't understand, I need to go try it. Being able to get a clarity as to what's important makes it all different, right? If you can't work out what's the next most important thing to do, then it says you're not getting the right information. Right? Okay, I'm going to just, because I'm way behind. So, one other thing I'll talk to you about is tools. I have 4 minutes. I'm not sure I can get this in, so we'll go for it. But 10x developers are craftsmen. They care about tools, right? They make their own DevX. Right? If this is your life, right, this is CNCF, loads and loads of tools, and you're trying to figure out what to do, well, a 10x guy will have worked out what his tools map was going to be. This is the real one. This is what CNCF give you to help you work through that large amount of stuff. right? But a 10x developer will build their own experience, their own set of tools that are important to them, right? Because they're all craftsmen, right? It's much better that you put your effort into learning the right tools than trying to use everything, right? So I'm going to do a couple more, and then I'm going to stop because I'd like to ask any questions, right? But I know people don't do this with tools, okay? We work around tools. We Google for, how do I turn security off, right? We write ways of breaking security. We write trust managers that turn this security off. We misuse tools because we don't understand how to use them, right? And then we do things like this. We go, oh, I have a tool, it doesn't do what I want, but there's an option to get it to do what I want, and I'll just use it without thinking of the consequences, right? And that comes up so often. You talk to people and they go, well, I just thought I was doing the right thing, right? That's sort of 10x. 10x is you know what the tools do, right? I'm going to whiz past this stuff. They understand the tools they use the tools they understand. That means, for whatever tool you pick, spend some time learning what it does, read the manual, try it out, because one day that will become important to you, at the very least, to support you having that surprise that says, I didn't know we could do that, right? Learning these tools removes the guesswork. Removing guesswork removes waste, makes you more productive. So there we go. Almost on time. I have some rules, and you can write your own rules about this, right? But a 10x developer, is to deliver high-quality code on time, then it only does what is necessary. Everything else is waste. If you're late, or it's not high quality, or it does more than necessary, you wasted time, right? And all the time, you're trying to understand what's important, what facts are, reducing uncertainty. Every time you can reduce uncertainty, things get more solid. Rule 3, incremental value. Takes control of their environment, uses the tools wisely, correctly, right? Incremental value. Don't do big things. You know it doesn't work. Do all that you need to do. You have to be a professional team player. There's no doubt about that. If you're not helping other people be successful and achieving their goals and working better with them, then the whole team is less productive. And that's not what you're trying to achieve. And then with all these rules, you have the last one, which is 10x developers, however you talk to them, and they'll tell you how they'll do things, then at some point you'll go, but you said, and they'll go, yeah, but they knew why they could break the rules and they did so. And that's it. Thank you very much. Sorry, slight stop at the moment, at the beginning. I have 12 seconds to take questions. We can do that, or I'm at the Stenotype booth for the whole conference and I'm walking around. So if you want to come and tell me why I'm wrong, I would love to hear it. If you want to tell me other things, I'd love to hear it. Otherwise, thank you very much.